toward the heavens, and he saw the face of Jesus, and it rolled him over the tide. And I've never said a prayer he could not answer, and I've never shed a tear, oh, that he could not dry. So when the waves of life, they get so high you can't count them, he'll roll you over the tide.
Now life here it gets so hard and burdens get so heavy, and it's then I won't run. Oh, there's no place to hide. Then I just look up like old Stephen to the right hand of my Father, and he rolled me over the tide.
And I've never said a prayer he could not answer, and I've never shed a tear, oh, that he could not dry. So when the waves of life, they get so high you can't count them, he'll roll you over the tide. So when the waves of life, they get so high you can't count them,
You over the tide.
church, he'll still roll over the
Doing good, Landon. How you doing? All right, good morning. Luke chapter 22. Luke chapter 22 looks like started verse 66. Last week we studied about the arrest, his arrest in the garden, and how Judas had betrayed him. What I want you to put in your mind this morning is how long a night it really was. I mean, we take these and we think about it, but from the day before, you know, he goes into the upper room and with the disciples and begins all these things. I mean, he's been awake now. He's been awake now for almost 24 hours. And he's going through this long night without any kind of rest. As a matter of fact, the opposite of rest, he's being tormented, buffeted, absolutely put in all kinds of distress. And this morning, we're going to speak about that night after the arrest, of course. He is taken to the father-in-law of the high priest Caiaphas, whose name, they took him to the house of Annas. And there they begin a mock trial. For one, it was illegal to have a capital offense trial at night. But they were so intent on doing away with him, they wanted to do it as quick as possible. But here at the house of Annas, we see that he questions Jesus. He does, this is when the soldiers buffet him and treat him very, very bad, spit on him. And from there, because Annas wasn't the high priest, Jesus didn't have a whole lot to say, so they took him to the Sanhedrin, the highest court, the Jewish high, made up of 70 members, chief priests, elders, a lot of leading people, and they took him to the house of Caiaphas after that. And this is still, of course, the middle of the night. And as soon, verse 66, and as soon as it was day, the elders of the people and the chief priests and the scribes came together and led him into their council, saying, Art thou the Christ? Tell us. And he said unto them, If I tell ye, ye will not believe. And if I ask you, you'll not answer me, nor let me go. Hereafter, he said, O shall the Son of Man sit on the right hand of the power of God. Then said they, Art thou then the Son of God? He just told him he was. And he said unto them, Ye say that I am. And they said, What need we any further witness? For we ourselves have heard with our own mouth. Now, in the four Gospels, you take them all together, and like I said, Luke doesn't mention his trip to more or less Annas, the other priest, high priest, or the father-in-law of the high priest, or really a whole lot with here even with Caiaphas. But through the night, like I said, with Annas, he's tormented, he's buffeted, he's absolute, and then as the morning breaks, he is there in front of now the Sanhedrin, the highest court, and as I said, this trial, Jesus was charged with blasphemy. He's sentenced to death by crucifixion. And now, as the Sanhedrin, he goes, really it was the high priest Caiaphas was appointed by the Roman government, so more or less here he goes in front of the Sanhedrin. They do their trial. They do their questioning. And then finally they send him because they can't, the Jews, because they're actually occupied by Rome, because they have no authority to carry out a death sentence, they have to get him to Pilate to have him executed. So here takes up the story at daybreak. Like I said, he's been awake now 24 hours. And he's there in front of the Sanhedrin. And there, of course, they're set up in the temple court. So, no witnesses, as you'll see. You know, they had, through the night at the trial at Annas, they had false witnesses saying that, yeah, we heard him say he's going to tear down the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Yeah, we told him, we found it. But all these, they couldn't prove none of them. Nothing, you know, none of these, even the false witnesses couldn't make a difference in the trial. So, here in front of the high priest Caiaphas, no witnesses were called. And what they're wanting to Jesus do, they're wanting Jesus to incriminate himself by admitting the claim that he is the Christ. Now, that word, the Christ, what's that mean? That means, in the Hebrew, it's translated Messiah. Both words mean the same thing. God's anointed one. And this Messiah, don't get me wrong, this is the hope of every devout Jew, every devout Israelite, that a Messiah would come. I mean, they've been promised one. They evidently are looking for one. But Jesus is claimed to be one because of how Jesus was raised, because of his politics, because he was born lowly, because he was not, one to overtake the Roman government like they expected their deliverer, the Messiah, to be. Of course, they did not believe who he said he was. So, when they asked him, he said, "Art thou the Christ then?" Jesus didn't answer him well. In the book, in the Gospel of John, he said, "Yes, I am. Yes, I am, and I will." And you're going to know that when one day you're going to see me sitting at the right hand of the throne of God. Now, and he said, but here he says, I can tell you that I am, but, and I've told you that through many, you've heard me preaching in the temples, you've heard me preaching, doing this, and you've heard me probably claim it many times, but you won't, I can tell you yes right now, but you're not going to believe me. He knew that they wasn't going to, they wasn't going to release him no matter what he said or no matter what he done. How did he know that? Because this was his appointed time. Folks, God is still in control. He knows that. I mean, all this fake stuff, Jesus knew no matter what he said or did, this was his appointed hour. There wasn't nothing going to stop it. But that didn't mean he had to go through the torture and the suffering that he did through these people, through these religious leaders. Now, Jesus did give them what they needed in order to charge them with what they thought was blasphemy. He said, "Hereafter shall the Son of Man sit on the right hand of the power of God," in verse 69. Now that right hand of the power of God was a place of supreme honor, and when he says sitting at the right hand of the throne of God, that suggests that his job or the mission of that person had been done and had been completed. And the Sanhedrin recognized exactly what he was saying, and they demanded, "Art thou then?" Because They said, art thou then the Son of God? He just told him he was. And they cried out, what need we of any further witness? We ourselves, the Bible says in one of the other Gospels, he rent his clothes. The high priest tore his robe, cried out at how blasphemous a statement this was. What need have we of any further witnesses? For we ourselves have heard it with our own mouth. Now this trial, so-called trial, Jesus answered two very, very important questions. Two questions are answered about Jesus. And those questions about him then were very important questions, and folks, they still are today. You need to know the answer to them questions in your mind this morning. Is he the Christ? Is he the Christ? Is he the divine Son of God? Folks, I say that and you think, well, of course. Folks, listen to me. Unless you know that 100% in your life, then your life's not going to reflect. How you live your life's not going to reflect. Because there are people. Matter of fact, there are theologians who will tell you through commentary and through different things where Jesus never claimed to be the Son of God. Yeah, Mike, you shake your head, you roll your eyes. I mean, how ridiculous is that? For us to know that when Jesus, I mean, his disciples, they said, oh, that's just claims that his disciples made. Well, yeah, the disciples did make a claim. Jesus' memory, when he said, who do men say that I am? They said, some think you're John the Baptist, some think you're Elijah the prophet, some think you're Jeremiah, some think you're this, that, and the other. And Jesus went to his disciples and said, whom do you say that I am? And Peter said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And what did Jesus say? Jesus didn't say, no, not quite. Jesus said, he said, Peter, you didn't get that from anybody. The Father in heaven gave you that information, meaning he was telling the truth. He was saying exactly who he was. But how you answer that question has a very direct bearing on your, definitely on your time here on this earth and your eternal destiny. Now, chapter 23. And the whole multitude of them arose, the Sanhedrin, the whole multitude arose and led them unto Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, we found this fellow. Now all the charges have changed because blasphemy is not going to get him killed. I mean, blasphemy to get, they had to, Pilate, the Roman government didn't care about if he blasphemed the Jews and their religion. So they had to come up with all new charges when they brought in Pilate. They began to accuse him, saying, we found this fellow perverting the nation and forbidding to give tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ, a king. And Pilate asked him, saying, art thou the king of the Jews? And then he answered him and said, thou sayest it. Then said Pilate to the chief priests of the people, I find no fault in this man. And they were the more furious, saying, he stirreth up the people, teaching throughout all Jewry, beginning from Galilee to this place. Now, when Pilate heard of Galilee, oh, he's from Galilee, he asked whether the man were a Galilean. And as soon as he knew that he belonged unto Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who himself also was at Jerusalem at this time. So, here we go. As I said, being charged with blasphemy, sentenced to death. The Jews they lacked the power to inflict the death penalty. Their next step had to give him, he had to get him to a Gentile court. The governor of Palestine, appointed by Caesar himself, the Roman governor, Pilate, was who they had to see. And it says that the whole multitude, the whole court, the whole 70 of the hand, led him to Pilate. Now that in itself shows how resolved they were to eliminate Jesus. But as I said, the problem was the Gentile court didn't view blasphemy as a crime, punishable by death anyway. So they said, this fellow is perverting the nation. What they were accusing him was sedition, causing that he's causing the Jews to riot against the Roman government. They accused him of forbidding the people to pay their taxes to Caesar. But what did he really say when it came to that? I mean, that's how bold-faced lie. What he actually, that was actually a topic. They said, they come to him, tried to trick him. Hey, should we pay taxes? Should we pay taxes to Caesar? What did he tell them? Unto God, what is God's? Yeah, he told them, pay tax. Yeah. Finally, they said, and he's also saying, he's saying he's a king. He's meaning that he's a rival to Caesar. Every one of these statements, blatant, malicious, lies, and guess what? Pilate knew it. Pilate knew exactly they were all lies. But see, that's what makes Pilate even more guilty than what we want to give him. We want to look Pilate and say, oh, he tried to do, and he did. He tried four different times, 4 different ways to get him off of his back, the blood off of his. But he knew this. He knew all this stuff wasn't true. And that was even, and that makes him even more, So here he is. He had no, being the governor, Pilate was no dummy. He had escalated to this position as governor. He didn't have any desire to gratify their wishes. He had, but Jews either. So he said, I'm going to go take him. I'm going to go talk to him, and we'll find out. He began his own investigation. Of course, in Luke doesn't cover that much, but we know that through the other gospel, he took him back and he talked to Jesus, and he did come to Jesus and said, Are you a king? And Jesus more or less told him, yeah, I'm a king, but my kingdom's not of this world. He said, my kingdom's not of this world. He said, my kingdom is one of truth. And Pilate, standing right before the truth, he said, what is truth? And we also notice another God that Pilate is warned. His wife warns him in a dream, saying, listen, my husband, I'm telling you, I dreamed about, don't have anything to do with the death of this guy. Yes. Yes. Yes, he was. He wasn't. No, he wasn't that much interested. That's exactly right, Bob. That's exactly right. Now, Jesus, here he is, like I said, he's not denying. Jesus is not denying. You don't hear him in there saying, and all these things they're saying about me is untrue. He's not denying any of the charges. But Pilate comes out after question. He says, I don't find anything wrong with this man. There's especially, I don't have any kind of basis to put him to death. And he announced, and he come out and he told the chief priests and the people, I find no fault in this man. And then when he says that, man, the Jews, they go absolutely crazy. They say, oh my God, this was our only chance. And he said he knew, and Pilate knew that even though they all these things, they were moved by envy. He said Pilate knew that they were moved by envy. Jesus was not the criminal that they said he was. So they became, when he said, they became even more fierce. And they started saying that, wait a minute, don't you hear us? He's stirring up, he's a seditionist. He's causing riots. He said, I'm telling you, more or less they said, Caesar's going to know about this and how you've done nothing about it. But when they began to mention how he has caused all this in Galilee, when old Pilate heard, oh, he's from Galilee. Oh, this is good. This is one of his chances to get it off his back. He said, I'm going to send him. Oh, Herod the king, appointed king by name only. He's also appointed by Caesar. He said, this is his jurisdiction. I'm going to send him over and get him off my back. Get him off my back. Yeah, get the blood off me. So he's there before Pilate, all through this night trial. He's taken early in the morning to Pilate. He's taken very early in the morning, by the way. He's on the cross at 9 a.m. This is going on still this morning. So here, all this is going on very early in the morning. So here, take him. He says, I'm going to send him to Herod. Verse 8, when Herod saw Jesus, he was exceedingly glad. Why? For he was desirous to see him of a long season. He'd been wanting to see Jesus a long time. Why? Because he had heard many things of him, and he had hoped to have seen some miracle done by him. Then he questioned with him in many words, but he answered him nothing. And the chief priests and the scribes stood and vehemently accused him. And Herod with his men of war set him at naught and mocked him and arrayed him in gorgeous robe and sent him again to Pilate. In verse 12, and that same day Pilate and Herod were made friends together, for before they were at enmity between themselves. Now, Pilate sends him to Herod. Herod said, oh, finally, I'm going to get to meet this man. Because Jesus' reputation, Herod had heard, everybody had heard how he had healed the sick, made the lame walk, raised people alive. Herod had heard, and he wanted to see him, not because of who he was, because he wanted to see he wanted to do some magic trick in front of him. He wanted him to do some sort of miracle in front of him. And that's why, if you'll notice, Herod is the only man in the New Testament that Jesus stood before where he had absolutely nothing to say to Herod. And one reason I think Herod, Jesus knew what Herod had done to his friend and his cousin, John the Baptist. Knew what kind of evil and despicable man that he was. He didn't. He answered Herod not a word. Never, as a lamb before his shears were dumb, he opened not his mouth. But Herod did take this time to make fun and to poke fun, and this is one of the times where Herod's guards take Jesus out and no doubt beat him, no doubt torment him, place the crown of thorns upon his head, put the robe upon him, give him a rod, smack him with it, declare him king of the Jews, mocking. They got their kicks dressing Jesus up as the king, mocking him, giving him fake reverence by hitting him and striking him and doing everything they could to shame him. Now, if Herod wanted to do what was right, he would have, as he knew this man wasn't guilty of nothing, he would have turned him loose. But instead, he sends him right back to Pilate. Now, these trials that Jesus went through, these people that he had been standing before right now, was just a taste. As much as he was already suffering, this was just a taste of the suffering that was to come. But here Jesus is, Son of God, without sin, no fault. He endured these sufferings without a word. Without defending himself, without saying these accusations are not true. The mockery, the things he went for our sake. He went through all that innocent, without sin, no fault of his own. For our sake, he went through stuff. And that got me thinking, how little we endure for his sake. I mean, we're complaining, we're complaining, we're griping, we're doing this and that over absolutely nothing compared to what he went through. He did it for our sake. How little are we enduring for his sake? And what we do endure, we don't endure it without putting the blame on somebody or crying about something or, verbalizing our endurance and how much we're going through. All this so far, like I said, just a taste. He's going to go through a whole lot more for our sake. But even up to now, all these went through without any kind of defense, without any kind, but for our sake, he's enduring this without complaint, and here he is. How little do we endure for his sake? Verse 13, and Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and rulers and the people, he said unto them, Ye brought this man unto me, as one that perverteth the people. And behold, I have examined him before you. I have found no fault in this man touching those things whereof ye accuse him. No, nor yet Herod. For I sent you unto him, and lo, nothing worthy of death is done unto him. I will therefore chastise him and release him. For of a necessity he must release one unto them at the feast of Passover. Now, Pilate's plan to get rid of Jesus failed. Herod sent him right back to him. And both of them in agreement, he's not guilty. And this public, listen, this declaration of his innocence, of him being not guilty, is pretty significant coming from these public figures. Jesus was about to be offered up as a sacrifice of sin, and guess what? To be that, he had to be without spot or blemish. And here you have his enemies, more or less, the public, claiming exactly that. There's no fault in this man. He is not guilty. He was a lamb without spot or blemish. And although he says he was accused by his enemies, he was judged by them, they could find no fault or prove any charges against him. And by that he is fulfilling the Lamb of God that taketh away the sin of the world without any kind of fault, the spotless Lamb of God. Now, like I said, Pilate, 4 attempts here. We're going to find out. He told the Jews, first off, he told the Jews, settle it yourselves. This ain't a problem for me. Settle it yourselves. He tried to send him to Herod. And now he's trying to persuade the Jews to accept his release of Jesus, because during the Passover feast, it was custom for him to release unto them one of his prisoners. And he's just taken for granted that this is a policy, and the people's going to want you, said, I'm going to release him under that custom that we always do. I'm going to release Jesus. And then also, here's one thing he does. He said, I'm going to release him, but first I'm going to try to please the Jews, because I'm going to take him and I'm going to scourge him, more or less beat him to within an inch of his life, to where you couldn't recognize him anymore. Then they might feel a little bit more sympathetic and let him go, knowing that he's got his punishment. Because this is when he is taken and scourged with the cat of 9 tails, where absolutely his flesh, I mean, if you will watch documentaries, if you watch medical people that say, folks, listen to me, this wasn't just cuts, this was his flesh laid open to the bone with this thing it absolutely ripped the bones, and the metal that was in this cat of 9 tails would grab a hold of the flesh and completely rip it off. Flailed. And he brings Jesus. Before them. After he tells the Jews, I'm going to release him, I'm going to beat him, and then I'm going to release him. This bloodthirsty group of religious leaders, they resort to blackmail. And they said, we're going to file an official complaint to Caesar himself. If you let this man go, they said, you are not Caesar's friend. And guess what? here it is, peer pressure beginning to work on old Pilate. Even though, like I said, knowing he's without sin, knowing that he is absolutely guilty of nothing, fear of losing his job paralyzed him, and it caused him, and all that courage that he was supposed to have, it made him willing to sacrifice justice at the altar of convenience. He knowingly sentenced an innocent man to die so that he could remain the governor of Palestine. He compromised, and that compromise showed his lack of nerves to do the right thing at all costs. It's a big decision he made, but you know what? We make a lot of decisions like that in our life sometimes, and I wonder if we're willing to do right at all costs. If it's going to cost us our job, if it's going to cost us something even more than that, are we willing to do right? Pilate, like I said, he made a decision. And like I said, usually at this time, he offers a prisoner of their own choice, whoever the Jews want. But this time, even trying further, he says, I'm going to offer you release. And usually, like I said, the Jews chose who was going to be released. But this time, he gave them a choice between Barabbas and Jesus. And why did he give them his choice? He picked out the worst criminal that he possibly had in Barabbas, thinking nobody's going to choose Barabbas. Barabbas was a murderer. Barabbas was a seditioner. Barabbas was somebody who was absolutely trying to rebel against the Roman government. He was the worst one they had in the lot. Surely we'll take Barabbas over. Sure, they'll take Jesus over Barabbas. Verse 18, and they cried out all at once, saying, away with this man, and release unto us Barabbas, who for a certain sedition made in the city, and for murder was cast into prison. Pilate, therefore, willing to release Jesus, spake again unto them, but they cried, saying, crucify him, crucify him. And he said unto them the third time, why? What evil hath he done? I have found no cause of death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go. And they were instant with loud voices, requiring that he might be crucified. And the voices of them and of the chief priests prevailed. And Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they required. Verse 25, and he released unto them him that for sedition and murder was cast into prison, whom they had desired, but he delivered Jesus to their will. These Jewish leaders, they went and they rallied the support of the public that was there. They began, no doubt, to manipulate the crowd to choose Barabbas and demand that Jesus be crucified. And the more Pilate gave excuse, of the innocents and of the prisoner. He continued to argue with the mob, but their cry escalated, crucify him, crucify him. One of the other gospels say, crucify him. As Jesus, as Pilate, is washing his hands as a signal that he had nothing to do with the death of this just man, and he washes his hands of this man's blood. The people are shouting, crucify him. Let his blood be upon us and our children. Well, what a statement to make. And guess what? Guess what? They're reaping today their declaration of that statement. Pilate washed his hands, and as he washed his hands, he released Barabbas to them, and he gave Jesus to his soldiers to go crucify. Exactly what they wanted. Blood far from being from his hands. And as I said, you hear discussions all the time. Who crucified him? Was it the Romans? Was it the Jews? What group of people was it? Yeah, it was a group of people, it was sinners, as Mike said. When we see him lashed, when you see these terrible pictures and shows we watch, and our hearts, especially this time of year, reach out to that suffering. But it's even more if you really realize it's your sins that put him there. My sin put him there. Not only did he take it, but he took it without this. Once the will of the Father become crystal clear, he was going to carry out no matter what. And he did it. He did it. Our sin, as we said, our sin put him there, made him go through this. But he said, because for the joy that was set before him, that's me and you, let's say, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, despised the shame, and is now set down at the right-hand throne of God. Now, I'm done. This lesson today is about choices. Hey, all we see, and life, we know life is about choice. We choose every day whether we're going to do right and be obedient to God, or we're going to choose sin. We accept Christ. We make that decision. People are going to have to make a decision. If you're lost today, listen to me. You're lost and done today. You're going to make a choice. You're going to make a choice whether you accept Jesus or you reject him. You're going to make a choice whether you confess him or you deny him. Pilate made a choice. Pilate made a choice and then washed his hands. But I'm going to tell you something. He didn't wash his conscience. Herod made a choice. You said, what did he do? Well, even when he didn't do anything, even when really Herod didn't take any action at all, he still had, that was a choice. Even refusing to choose is a choice, right? And disbelief is a form of belief. And because no man is going to avoid making that choice in regard to Jesus, in regard to the Christ. You can't be neutral. A lot of people want to try to change. I'm not for him, but I'm not against him. I'm neutral. Folks, listen to me. When it comes to Christ, neutrality is impossible. You're either for him or you're against him. Bottom line. You're either for him or you're against him. And matter of fact, this is it. Jesus, God is your father, or Satan is your father. Yeah, by default, if you're not for him, like I said, there's no neutrality. If you're not for him, then you're serving your father, Satan. Period. Thank you for